Good evening, everybody. We will call to order the budget workshop for the City of Beaumont, Day 2, January 17th to order. As I said before last night, we're going to start with a couple of things. We'll start out with the library tonight, followed by a brief question and answer session for questions from members of council from topics we covered last night. And then we will head into page 11, operating, followed by page 50, capital, fees and charges, and service levels. So if we're lucky, we get through this tonight. If not, we'll be back here bright and early tomorrow morning, or perhaps at the committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday, but we'll decide that at the end of the night. But anyway, I'd like to welcome Len, the outgoing chairman of the library. I'm sorry, I don't know you. Aruna, pleased to meet you. Welcome to the budget workshop, and we'll just get going and let you start.
As you know, we started the search for our next Martin Walters designed the right places, and one that he was working in Martin leadership and contributions. The Beaumont Library continues to offer multiple community services and programs to the public. I've included an infographic with some key stats on page 2, but to speak on a few numbers. Over 60,000 people walked through our doors, in addition to over 24,000 library website visits that were made. We offer 1,439 programs for children and young adults, 244 for adults and seniors. In terms of total numbers, over 14,500 people attended various sessions, making the library a constant hub of community activity. We provided over 43,000 interlibrary loans connecting patrons to resources across Alberta. Our preschool, children, and youth programming and resources support early childhood development, literacy, and social skills in the next generation. As our statistics consistently reveal year after year, the Beaumont Library plays a significant role in shaping the quality of life of Beaumont. I would like to share a few quotes found on the third page of the package that were significant to our staff. We help. Tutoring has been great. Alex went from math being his worst subject and one he avoided to being his favorite. He even joined a math club at school. We're so grateful. We connect. An elderly patron relocated to Beaumont from Ontario and joined the library knitting group. After a year or two, she had moved to an extended care facility in Leduc. 2 senior knitter friends faithfully visit her every week. We mentor. A parent commented on the number of youth volunteers at a recent event. She wondered about how to get her child involved. We are moved. Twice a month, library staff hold a short story time at the seniors' extended care. While patrons are generally happy to see us, one day after a reading, a patron grabbed their hand and arm and covered it with kisses, saying, "Please, please come back again." What a small step it takes to engage in someone's life. These are just a few of the many examples of how the library endeavors and succeeds at helping, connecting, and mentoring the community around us. In terms of the budget, the 2020 Municipal Library Board budget ask is an increase of 7.6% over the 2019 budget. The largest contributor is hiring new casual staff to provide support in the library. We're continuing our 5-year plan to get closer to the 2018 provincial standards and best practices for public libraries in Alberta that recommends a 0.7 FTE per 1,000 population. We would also like to recognize and thank Mayor Stewart and members of City Council for including the Beaumont Library in the Beaumont Recreation Parks and Facilities Master Plan. At this point, we welcome any questions, and thank you again for your time.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for coming in, and it's always great because the library does great work in our community. We're happy to support it. At this point, I will open the floor up to questions from members of council. Councillor Downlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation and welcome to our workshop. Just a very quick question, maybe for our presenters, maybe for Mr. DeBlanco. I'm looking on page 8 and the library increase is 6.09%, and our presentation from our guest is suggesting just over 7%. So I'm wondering if I'm misinterpreting, or just something missing, sorry, not missing, but something I'm not understanding Or is there a difference in numbers? It's a small difference, mind you, but it is a difference nonetheless.
So on Monday, the library board met and made amendments to the budget. And just because we don't have a library manager at the moment, we didn't realize that we had to submit it at that time.
Okay.
That small difference is basically accounting for the library board's decision to do a cost of living increase, matching the consumer price index.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gaspain.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always interested in the FTE. I remember back at the 2018 provincial guidelines, all that sort of stuff. You said you're trying to get there. Just curious on where we're at within that scale. If you could speak to that, or maybe come back to it when you know the answer. Just see where we are along there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that to get the specific number. Mm-hmm. But I think we're in year 2 of year 5, so I think we're 3 FTE below.
Yeah, but so I guess I know you've put in that 5 years, so we're trending. We're doing what we're trying, what we said we're going to do, and we're on target there.
Yes, with this budget,
With this budget, thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. Thanks for all the good work you do. I miss you guys. Don't get to see or hear what's going on, so it's nice to get an update. Just because I'm not as close to it as I was in the past, but I appreciate knowing what essentially that 7.6% means to you. How much of that is the increase in the COLA, and what percentage increase are you giving to the staff? How many new positions? Like, just a little more detail there would help me to get my head around it.
Sure. So the 7.6% increase, basically, maybe about $9,000 of that is tied towards increase in fees we're paying and rent that we're paying, and the rest of it is tied towards staffing costs. The majority of that is hiring casual staff to, again, continue to support the library and helping people kind of focus in on certain roles and helping with the circulation desk. So the cost of living increase, again, is a 1.7% increase, matching the consumer price index there.
And I think that number is around 10,500. Mm-hmm. It's part of the budget.
Following on Councillor Barnhart's question, so when we provided guidance to administration back in December, we were really pushing for status quo budgets with no more than cost of living increases. So what would happen if your 7.6 turned into 1.7?
If the 7.6 is our total budget ask, and
yes.
the 1.7 is just like say $10.5 thousand of that initial ask. So
yes, but on your total budget, so you're asking for a total 7.6% increase, not looking just at the COLA for wages, but what if we cut your ask from 7.6 to 1.7 and just went cost of living status quo? What would that do to you?
So are you saying we would prevent our staff from moving up on the grid?
That's your decision. I'm looking at your total number.
Yeah.
You're asking for 7.6%.
Yeah.
And if we went, we're only going to give you 1.7% increase for this year. What does that do? Does that prevent the grid from happening? And
yeah, so that would prevent our employees from moving up their grid pay, right? Because if we're talking about the difference between, so there's essentially an $80,000 difference in terms of the COLA that we asked for, which is the 1.7%. That accounts for $10,000 of the difference. Mm-hmm. The majority of the remaining of that difference, so that's about $70,000, is based on new casual staff. So we would be unable probably to hire to do casual staff, and it also involves people moving up the step on their grid, right? So at 1.7%, we probably have to make the decision to have the staff not move up the grid and just get a COLA.
okay, so yeah, Councillor Danlock.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Stowe.
Please, sorry, Bill. Please, just wanted to reply to that. That is a very hypothetical question. As far as I understand it, under the Library Act, we only have the power to refuse or accept the budget that the Library Board are proposing.
Well, I'm proposing to. Sorry, no, I'm proposing that if that's my choice, then I'm considering not accepting it. Then because we did impose a 1.7% status quo guidance on our own staff. And so we're providing money out. Otherwise, why are they?
If I could just interject.
Sure.
I think according to the Library Act, you guys have the power to reject the budget, approve the budget in whole or in part.
Okay.
So you guys have the option of determining how much you provide to us.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we're going to totally turn it down.
Yeah.
But because it is smaller numbers compared to the overall budget of the municipality, but
yeah,
I'm just trying to be status quo.
Yeah, it's not all or nothing. I'm just making sure. Yeah, it's in whole or in part.
Okay. But again, then the library board again are not bound by whatever the directive is that the rest of city staff would be to
Correct.
increase pay or not increase pay.
I'm not telling them how to do it. I'm not.
Good. Good.
I am not telling them how to spend their overall budget and where to allocate their money. I'm looking at the overall increase. If we give them the whole 7.6%, they can put it the way they want it to go. If we give them 10%, they can put it where they want it to go. If we give them 2%, they can put it to where they want it to go. I'm not going to tell them how to do their budget.
Okay, hence the question.
I'm just looking at the total bucket. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a general question about programming, but now we're talking about your topic now. So the question I may have, if I may ask, so having said that with the Library Act and so on, who do the employees of the library work for? The City of Beaumont, or is the library a separate entity? Because I'm not sure I understand the question, the distinction there with the Library Act. If you don't mind, if I could ask that question, who do the employees work for?
The library board.
Library board. So they're not actually City of Beaumont employees.
That is correct.
I always thought they were. Sorry, maybe I should have known that.
It's a common misconception, just because we're tightly bound. We share services.
Actually,
so
I kind of knew that. Sorry, I'm having. Yeah, I think I kind of knew that. I didn't exactly understand the link there. So, okay, if I may, I'm prepared to withdraw my program question. Other people have a question about the money question. So I'll back off for now in case we go down this path.
Councillor Van
Not money, but same staffing question. 17 staff. What's the mix between full-time and part-time? Do you recall?
We have two full-time staff and one, of course, library manager that we're looking to fill. So that's 3 full-time staff.
Yep.
And the rest are part-time and casual.
Rest are part-time and casual. So any additions to staff would be to pick up more part-time shifts. Then.
That's right.
Okay, so 3. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Goswin.
Yeah, it's maybe a difficult question to answer. Of the 7.6 you're looking for, so again, I'll go back to that FTE piece that we're trying to get on to continue on that track. Do you know roughly how much of that 7.6 is, taken up with hiring on those folks? Or,
So you can figure that out.
I do have it.
and maybe you don't need to get into it now. We're not making any final decisions or anything like that. But the mayor's thrown out 1.7, and if that happens, then clearly we're not going to be on target for our FTE increase, which concerns me. So maybe some supplementary information for when we come back for our committee of the whole or next kind of deliberations on that, just so that we can understand the impact of that. Thank you.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, in the past, Leduc County would have an opportunity to review this budget. Has that happened? Is that still the protocol? Is that still the process?
For the library budget?
For the library budget?
I would have to refer to the presenter.
I don't think that's been the practice in the last number of years. I believe that we passed the budget, and then at that point, that's when they would take a look. I know that there's a cost share involved.
Right.
But they do that after we do our budget.
Yeah, just going back to the days when I was on the library board,
Yeah.
Leduc County would have an opportunity to make their comments because they did have a cost share attached to that arrangement. So, okay, thank you.
Do we cost share with the county at all? A little bit?
They provide, I would say this year being 2019, it was around $10,000 they contributed.
Councillor Barnett?
Thank you, Your Worship. Sure, ask the question. Well, the first question I wanted to ask, Mayor, you mentioned that the library board was given direction to bring it in at a certain percentage, weren't they?
No, I mentioned that if we gave our staff direction,
Okay.
I'm not aware of any direction that was given to the library board.
So you had no knowledge of council wanting it to stay at a certain
I was just providing some background as to why I was asking the question the way I was.
Fine. Good point. So I understand that. And the second question is around, well, I'm trying to compare. We haven't had our budget books for very long, so I'm looking back to see how other departments may have increased their budget, but the overall city budget may not have gone up by that much. And the library is a small budget, so when you take a little bit of money and you add 48,000 to it, it looks like a big percent.
Right.
And I guess that's what it looks like to me, is we're dealing with growth in a facility with programs, and we're not necessarily adding on a whole bunch of extra staff. We're dealing with casual labor who are providing programs to our growing community. So I'm wondering why we would balk at that, because it's not just the percentage we should be looking at, but what the service is getting in the expansion. So I wonder if you could just maybe, am I correct in that, or have I misread the budget application?
So yes, you are correct. So the majority of the money that we're asking for, the around $70,000 to $80,000, is towards hiring that casual staff. A lot of times we have, again, 3 full-time staff members, and 1 is, of course, we're still looking for. So they're really doing a lot of tasks, and the part-time staff are doing a lot of tasks. And so, you know, they're working at the front desk, they're doing their roles as well. And when we can bring in casual staff, either to help with programming or to work at the front desk to free up time for more programming and community center sessions to happen, all the better.
Councillor Newkirk.
Thank you. I think the only number we haven't heard in all the numbers we're talking about here is how many FTE we're currently at. Do you guys have that number?
I can try and find it here. I think I took that number.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is just when you take the target of 0.7 FTE times about 20,000, the need or the target we'd be reaching for would be 14 on the math, and I'm just wondering what's our delta, what's our gap look like, just to help knowledge. So yeah, thank you.
It'll take me a minute, so if you have
Sure.
another question.
Yeah.
Councillor Dallek,
Thanks for digging.
move on to program? I think that's-
Actually, let's answer the question if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll ask my programming question. So, sorry, just to clarify, because I think you're very interested in the program, obviously, all of our questions. So, in our proposed operating budget, we're showing a number of 982,400, an increase of 56 from 2019. Your document or your handout here suggests a budget of 1.106, which is approximately 124,000 more than we have in our package for our workshop here. So that additional money is all going towards staffing costs, or is it the 56,400 we're showing as an increase? Is that just for programming, and the additional ask is for staffing, or is there some staffing already built into the 56.4? So I'm trying to get a delta as to what the difference is and where it's going to be allocated.
So the number that you have originally is, sorry, can you just read?
In our workshop package here, we're showing a 2020 projected operating budget for the library of 92,400, an increase of 56 from 2019's budget. And your handout here is suggesting 1.1, just over 1.1 million, which is an increase of 7.6. So there's a delta of 124 from what I'm looking at, or part of what we're looking at in our workshop package to what you're presenting to us.
I'm even looking at last year's budget number, and that was over $1 million. So I'm confused with how.
Okay,
This
Mr.
year's
Blanco may be
budget
able
would
to assist.
And Your Worship, through the rest of council, I'm going to refer this to Mr. Blanco, that the numbers are not a straight correlation back and forth, and he'll be able to explain why.
Okay. Thank you.
So the number you're seeing on page 8 is one with the thing which is the city-owned asset, and then it's going to be a regular process for the grant and for libraries like that. So
Okay.
to tie the number on page 8 to the documents in front of you is going to.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot. I thought maybe it might be an easy answer, but thank you. So may I ask my programming question?
Sure.
If I may?
Yeah, no.
In your opening remarks, Ms. Brennan, you mentioned, I think you said approximately 1,400 programs or day events. What kind of things would those be? That's almost 120 a month. That's a lot.
So we hold various different types of events. There's story time for, from 6 months old to 5 years old, where kids can drop by and start getting exposed to literature and fun activities, crafts. We have for older kids, we have reading clubs, Lego activities on the weekend. We have language courses. We do events such as there's so many knitting, like the knitting club. There's just a variety. Our friends the Friends of the Library puts on wine tasting fundraisers and community building events. We have events for seniors, so they had kind of creating wool felting objects or bird watching, just all sorts of different things that we put on just to engage the community.
Thank you. You should.
That's why it was Rhyme Time. Rhyme Time's a fun program. Sure.
In your budget, operating budget, how much do you allocate towards communication, like to promote the programs of the library throughout the community of Beaumont? I'm not looking at, not put you on the spot at all, but I'm looking at the detailed operating budget. It doesn't really break down any kind of communications. You must spend some of your resources on communicating to the community. How much would that be approximately, or is that enough, for example?
So we do have an advertising line for 2,200. We try to put things out in the newspaper. We do Facebook and Twitter, and just try to get the word around. So
yeah, well,
it is a question. Yeah.
A lot of what we do is word of mouth in the community. Partnering with the newspaper, they'll come every month or every week and talk about what's happening at the library, get that into the newspaper as an article. We try to be as efficient as possible using, social media, word of mouth, free advertising, partnering with other committees to try and keep that part of our budget down. Yeah.
Any further questions? So we're just waiting for. No pressure. Sorry? Yeah, we can always catch that later too if it's.
I have it, but I have it not in a. I've got it by hours, so I'd actually have to do a calculation. I'll get you that information as soon as possible. Who do I put that through to? Through Curtis?
Yeah. I appreciate it. It's an extensive report, and I do support what's going on, but I just wanted to know the impacts. I think I got my head bit off there a little bit, so. Anyway, seeing no further questions, thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and what we can do to support you, we will. And
awesome. Thank you so much. I'll get you that information.
Yeah, no, that's.
Thank you.
It's only like 60 grand or 70 grand, so it doesn't take much to get from 2% to a big percentage. But for optics sake, I mean, that's. Welcome back to the front of the show. Continuing on with library. Just trying to wrap my head around how the funding goes, because I know we put out a library requisition. So would that 7.6% be put totally on the requisition, or is there a portion that's funded from tax?
So it's funded through the requisition. Basically, the city has the ability to give any number it desires in terms of this unconditional operating grant to cover the expenditures for the library. So you have the range from $1 to what is proposed here. The budget package that was provided on Tuesday reflects a slight variance from what was proposed here. My understanding is the library board had their meeting on Monday and approved a slightly different budget, in which would include a $10,500 increase from what's in this package. So in order to approve the budget that was presented tonight, we would have to approve this additional $10,500 ask.
Okay. But that would come out of their requisition, because I'm just looking at page 46, library taxes, which I'm assuming is requisition is $785. And then the government transfers for operating, is that provincial or federal, or is that some municipal dollars as well?
So the government transfers, just draw, which page are we looking at? So
46.
It'd be provincial grants.
That'd be provincial grants?
Directly to the library.
So the whole like budget increase at all would be on the library tax, which is a separate item, which I could basically point at them and go, they did it.
The whole increase that would go onto the tax levy and then the requisition for it is the library taxes line. So right now, what we built into the 1.7% is the 47.4. As Mr. DeBlanco mentioned, the budget you've just been presented, there's the delta of 10,500.
Okay.
If council is supportive of the budget that was presented by the library board, then we would need to adjust the city's overall budget to include that 10.5 increase into our overall property tax ask.
Okay.
It does. Yeah. It would move it to about 1.8, roughly.
Sure. Go ahead, Councilor Barr.
So the library requisition, how does that work? That's not separate from the city's taxes?
It shows up as, from what I understand, it shows up as a separate line on your property tax bill. It goes out with everything else that the city of Beaumont needs to requisition for taxes, property taxes though. It'll just show up as a separate line when you as a homeowner receive your property tax bill from the city.
Similar to the Duke Foundation and
education.
Yeah, education.
Yeah.
Councilor Donnelly.
I apologize for the need for clarity, but if you don't mind, bear with me for a moment. So on page 8, the operating budget we've been referring to since the beginning of our workshop, the library budget proposed 2020 is 982,400. Are you, am I correct in saying we need to add 10,000 more to that to get the budget, library budget as presented? Only 10,000 more is not the additional 124 I was looking at from their presentation a few minutes ago. Just to clarify, it's only 10 is still 10, but 10 is not 124. So
the difference between what is presented in the budget package and the library budget that was just presented is 10,000.
10,000. Okay, so it become 992,400 approximately.
That's correct.
So it would affect the 1.72 projected tax increase by a very small amount nonetheless, but it would be an impact.
That's
okay.
correct.
That's clear now. Thank you very much.
Further questions on financing for the library? So I guess the question that's before council now is are we supportive of the ask that we were just presented, or are we comfortable with what's currently in the book? Councilor Barnhart.
Your Worship, most definitely I'm supportive of what's been presented by the library board. I think they do a fantastic job, and I think our city is the better for it. They take over such a huge amount of programming in the city that I feel, looking at how they spend their money, it's painful sometimes to see how little they put to some things because they're making it work with the staff that they have. So I don't by any means think that the 10,000 shouldn't be given to them.
Councilor Margosway?
Yeah, I mean, what she said, I mean, long time on $10,000.
Okay, so I'll put unless there's other comment, is you guys just going to support it? I'm just going to throw the motion out there that we support the budget as presented by the library and pass it on. Okay, so I will motion that we support the budget as presented by the chair of the library board for incorporation into our 2020 budget. All in favor, show of hands. Carries unanimously. Moving on. Okay, so, wow, there were some good questions. Oh, I did. Did some good questions. Councillor Newkirk, comment, question, query?
Yeah, you bet. Just going back to the point I made last night. So, just wondering if administration again is able to keep track of the ups and downs and the pluses and minuses, and this would be the, you know, in the Excel chart, the first up for the night, so that when we get talking, we'll know where we end up. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, so we're at the point in the evening where last night we went through the departmental budgets from a very high level. We managed to get through them all. There was a couple of questions that came up, and so we'll just take a couple of minutes and go back there. There was Councillor Newkirk, you had some questions on transit costs. Provided we ever get the answers on that. And questions regarding transit commission and startup costs, were they carried in this budget? Sure. Councillor Moncasway.
Thank you. And maybe less of what are the numbers, but maybe more of a discussion around, depending on what happens at the RTSC, is it prudent for us to put some money away some way through some sort of form to potentially cover any startup costs that we may need to incur as part of the budget package. So instead of trying to figure out, we don't know what the numbers are yet. We obviously haven't gone through that discussion and voted on it, but we know there may be some startup costs. So I wonder if it's more prudent just for us to find a fund or have a discussion around that, just to put it away so that if we're in, we don't need to go back and revisit the budget.
Well, definitely. If we're into becoming part of the Transit Commission, I think now is a prudent time to put a bit of a placeholder in the budget. Councillor Danlett, thoughts? You're not
on transit, another topic.
Well, let's deal with transit.
Yeah, yes, I guess my point. So I asked very specific, detailed questions. Yes, last night about it, but I don't think I need those answers yet. I think that's more of a discussion when the actual Transit Commission discussion happens. I just think that we need to. We should think about putting some money aside so that we don't need to come back and adjust the budget if we go ahead.
Just to follow up and where Councillor Moncasway is going, this process has still been discussed in camera, which is why Councillor Moncasway doesn't want to get into the details. So if I understand what you're suggesting is we take a ballpark and park some money for a one-time, which would, Mike Ballard would explain to us, what we could take out from a reserve, put it up on a shelf and label it RTSC, and it goes nowhere. Just piggybacking off of what you're saying, just wanted to get the point that it's still embargoed. So,
thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to be careful with my words.
Yeah, and you are. Yeah, appreciate that too. So I guess the question is council supportive of putting a bucket on the shelf in case we approve it in February? Now we need some guidance on what that should be, because I'm trying to remember the document.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, can I say a number? Yeah, I can say a number, but I don't know if I can or not, given where the discussions are. But I think 200 would be prudent for startup costs to put away for 2020. Again,
I really want to have this conversation. We can't.
Yeah, this is going to come from reserves. We're going to definitely debate whether we are going to use that or not when it's in front of us.
But I definitely think it's prudent to put it in. Does that seem a fair number to?
Maybe I'd look to Ms. Lewin to back me up on that number.
Regional Transit Services Commission startup costs. It's coming to council in February for a vote. I think it's going out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's going out for public consultation here in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, maybe not that word, but it's going out to the public.
It's going out to the public. in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then
Go to the public
council
next
about
week,
the same time.
and then it's going to be in front of council, and there are some potential startup costs. Some we're hoping the provincial government can cover it. There are lots of options. Last resort is obviously that each municipality pays their share of the startup that gets recouped. Again, I'm probably going too far here. So I guess I think it's prudent to put it in from reserves. It's not going to impact the tax. Well, maybe I'll let you guys speak to this, but it's not going to. I don't think it's going to impact the tax. It's just putting it in reserves, and if we need it, great. If we don't,
It goes
it's there.
right back into reserves.
Yeah.
Councillor Hendricks?
Bishop, I was just going to ask the administration if there's any thought of a spring planning session regarding budget. If there was such an event, we used to have that we would catch up on all these other issues that are still percolating. That's my question.
So I guess being somewhat new to the organization still, I'm not entirely sure what the spring planning session involved. What I would say is definitely the intent is to bring forward the budget for amendment prior to setting the tax rate bylaw. And the intention at that time is to pick up any kind of loose ends, I'll call them, or changes that may have occurred between now and approximately April, start of April. So there is a bit of an adjustment or an opportunity to tweak the budget, I would say, before we actually set the mill rate and send out the actual property tax notices.
Okay. So as the resident historian, what we used to have is a spring planning session. It was a Saturday. It was just prior to basically finalizing the mill rate. And we capture all these discussions that, that's being teased out here. Just so that we've got it solid, clean, and done. So,
yep, definitely there will be something very similar. And one of the bigger things too would be education requisition, making sure that we're actually got the right numbers to collect for that. So definitely an opportunity to
sure.
Make some changes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barnhart?
Thank you, Your Worship. I see the need for it. I'm not opposed to that. It's coming at us kind of out of the blue. It's not in here. So my question would be, what impact would it have on the tax increase, if any? Because I've heard someone mention reserve. So if it's a reserve and we don't use it, it goes back in. Just explain that process to me.
Yeah, certainly I think with a one-time expenditure, it certainly does make sense to fund it from a reserve. And absolutely, if we didn't use or didn't have to incur those expenditures, they would essentially stay in the reserve and we would just move forward. I'll maybe just offer another comment, and it is around the timing. So if this is a initiative that is going to be coming to council in February, at that point in time, there's also an opportunity within that context of that discussion to approve the expenditures coming from reserve. Just as an option for your consideration, hopefully the idea or part of the idea would be to have some more solid numbers, I guess, that we would actually know what would be the potential impact on the reserve. Part of the reason why I say that is if you look on page 70 in the book, operating reserves in its entirety right now is fairly low. We've pulled the $4.5 million to pay back the land acquisition from the reserves. The only thing that's not shown here is 2019 surplus, which again is a bit of an unknown at this point in time. So fully expecting the $268,000 to go up, just not sure by how much. And utilizing the $200,000 for this is going to, without consideration of the 2019 surplus, essentially drain the operating reserves. So,
Can I have a follow-up?
Follow-up, yeah.
So I think hearing that, I think then the discussion is, if you think it's prudent that this is something that should be come out of reserves, I guess then I think I'm happy to move forward and we can have that discussion later. What would concern me is if you thought that this is something that we should tack on to the tax, then we should have that discussion now. So I'm okay not putting it forward given the discussion here. and waiting till we debate.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well. But if we're contemplating putting it on the tax rate, that's for the time. Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, thank you. I did have one unanswered question from last night, and that was on the infrastructure piece. It was a question on stormwater pond maintenance, and if the stormwater pond maintenance had been factored into some of the long-term planning and costing. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Let's finish with transit first.
Sure.
Councillor Dowlick?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one last question from last night's discussions on the council operating.
We're going to finish with transit first.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was done, sorry.
Yeah.
Nope, my apologies.
Councillor Mark Swain are on the same page, but not sure if that was the will of council. So if the question is are we going to, because the reserves are going to be lower, are we looking at putting this 200 grand on the tax rate? In which case we should finish this discussion now. If not, if we're going to fund it out of reserve, we can have this discussion in February when this comes for decision. Councillor Van Newkirk?
Yeah, right now I've heard two options from administration, but would look for their guidance. Thank you.
What would you recommend?
So my recommendation would be reserve. If you put it onto the tax rate, it's essentially a 1% tax rate increase, to which there's some uncertainty as to whether or not we're actually going to incur these expenditures. So for me, my recommendation would be reserve. It's a one-time expenditure if we do incur it. And I believe there's going to be another transfer to the reserves on the operating side with the 2019 surplus. That's going to have a cushion. It may not be enough for operating reserves overall, but I think we're going to be much healthier than what we're projecting right now. So I think it's prudent to wait if we can and make the decision in about a month and take it from the reserves at that time.
Okay. So is council comfortable waiting? All in favor? Carries. So we will wait and have that discussion when it comes for decision in February. Councillor Van Newkirk, you're up next with your infrastructure question. So just back down, unless you're transit. Okay, transit. Go ahead.
Just an ask if administration could just provide the initial study where the initial transit piece came into Beaumont. There was some conversation about phasing and other things over time. And if our group could have that document just for information.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunlop, transit?
No.
Okay. Councillor Hendricks. Sorry. Councillor Van Newkirk, back to your infrastructure question.
Yeah, that same question. Stormwater pond, if they were included in the long-range forecast for maintenance, and just looking for some affirmation there. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Van Newkirk. So just to start off, the stormwater management facilities within the city are all fairly new. We do have operating and maintenance budget within our current storm operating budget. So at this point, there hasn't been a lot of maintenance required on them because they are fairly new. We are working on an asset management plan for that. So once that plan is in place, we'll be able to look at expenditures that are required within the next 10 to 15 years, and then we would look at potentially putting that into a reserve every year to do that.
Good answers. Anybody else got any infrastructure questions on storm? Councillor Download.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in going back to last evening on the council department on page 28, we had discovered the grant program, freed up some money for us. We asked Mr. DeBlanco to give his opinions and estimation on the travel and training allocation for 2020, how that might be reduced to a more reasonable level based on what you had discovered. You had a chance to make any observations for us on that, please? Thank you.
Yes, there's certainly some room that we could reduce that line item. A prudent number would be $30,000, so a $15,000 reduction would be what I would recommend.
So moved. Discussion on the motion. We want to reduce our council's travel and training budget to the average of the last few years to $30,000 from where it currently sits. Just because I don't want to flip the page. All in favor? Carries. Further questions from anything that was brought up last night? Those were the ones that were on my list. To go back to Councillor Donlett.
Just a quick question, don't mind, Mr. Blanco. The budget's 47.2, drops down to 30. Wouldn't that be a little more than 15,000 additional? Wouldn't it be like 17.2?
Yes, we can move it that much as well. Sorry, I guess my recommendation would be to reduce it by 15.
By 15, okay. Sorry, I thought you could feed on the...
If we want to go to 17.2, we can do that as well.
15's fine.
Fine. I just looked, make sure the numbers on the screen matched up what we're talking about, so that's all.
No worries. No, we're good, because we only reduced it by 15, so we're good. Okay, further questions on high-level items? Because if not, it's my intention now to move to page 11. Move to page 11, where we have operating changes to service. We have currently it's broken down into funded, unfunded, and funded utility. So, are there any more comments you want to put towards what's on the page? Or?
I don't think so. I think hopefully the page you have in front of you is fairly self-explanatory. We've tried to show some of the impacts in the future 2 years. So yeah, beyond that, leave it to council to have some conversations about what you have in front of you.
Okay. So before we get talking about funded and the unfunded that are on, is there any items on there? I know we're talking about feasibility study that the Art Society had proposed. They haven't asked about $150 grand. It's not on the unfunded sheet. I'd like to add that for discussion. Is there anybody else have an item that they would like so we can frame the scope of this discussion? Councillor Margolis-Wayne?
Yeah, previously we talked about, I've offered up a discussion around Indigenous Day celebration. I don't see that here, so
we have $20,000 for an inclusivity program, which is all.
It's not.
Isn't that part of that?
No, not from what I read. So if you want to discuss it there, and maybe that's where we open it up. But from what I read from the inclusivity program, it's not for that. So do we want to include that as part of that discussion?
Yeah, we'll include that as part of that discussion.
Okay.
Because we can change that number if it's not enough. Maybe I made an unwarranted assumption. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Sorry, what order did you want to go through now? Did you want to start talking about items or?
No, I'm looking for any items that are currently on the list that you would like to have added to be part of this discussion. Councillor Margolis-Wayne? Nope. Okay, so we have a feasibility study for an arts facility and an expansion of the inclusivity program. So I'm prepared to start talking about items. Count. Thirst out. On and off. Councillor Van Newkirk. Sure.
In the Parks and Rec master plan that we looked at on Tuesday, that we approved on Tuesday, there is a $1.3 million proposal for a library expansion. I'm assuming that would be a capital budget rather than an operating budget. And I was just looking at the capital budgets, which on what
page 50
it is, but those do not include any. That was also in the year 2021 for that particular proposal. So as the only amounts shown on the capital page are 2020, then I'm assuming it's not shown there.
Well, it's not on the 2020, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone through the back of the book where it's got the 10-year capital plan to see where it landed on there. But if you want to move that on to a discussion for this evening, then when we hit capital, more than happy to add it to the agenda.
Okay, yes, I'd like to do that, please. If we've made the commitment in one plan, then we need to at least address the question of how we would budget it. Do we not?
Well, you got to remember we're looking at the master plan, and so what you're actually asking us to do is pull projects out of the master plan and pick a spot for funding, which is fine. That's the role of the council, and that's what we're supposed to do. But I just want to make it clear that we can't afford the whole recreational master plan in one shot.
No, I was just looking at the one particular item in the recreational master plan.
And more than happy to look at it with you if you want to pull it out. Councillor McGuff-Swain.
Yes, I'll go to the first item, the sport and rec centre there. So page 12. Just a question around the child mind attendance.
Which page, man? 12?
Sorry, page 12. So I've got no issues with this, but I just, if you could just speak to what that looks like if we're, obviously we're assuming a lot more people through the centre, so I'm not familiar with what our plan is for that, but it looks like here that obviously we're hiring a child mind lead. Do we not have that position beforehand, and we need a new one?
So that would be Paul. Is that you, or is that?
Okay, sorry, I'm not familiar with how it was beforehand. Is that, how did we manage that before? Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. That's what I need to hear.
Councillor Newkirk?
I can stay on that same page, I guess, because it's near the beginning. The one piece here, I'm just wondering, where do we include the cost of the janitorial services for the BSRC? And I'm assuming we're going to have to do an increase on that because it's a physically bigger building. Just wondering if we could comment on that. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, so those costs would be within the rec center budgets, within community services, that department's budget. I'm not certain if it reflects an increase on here specifically, but that would be underneath materials and supplies budget line item.
Councillor McGuff-Swain? Is that what you needed?
I'll dig some more. Ask.
I guess maybe a process question to try and get going. Do you just want to just fire through these things and see if anyone's got any questions, and we can move on, just so that we can?
Yeah, that might be the best way to go. So we're not jumping all over the pages. So preferring to stick with the Beaumont Sports and Rec Center. We'll just continue on that, so we'll deal with it.
I got no issues for a while. So.
Yeah, Councillor Endicott?
Yeah, just following up on that, it looks like the community services, materials, and supplies is status quo-ish. It's like 3.2%. Are we finding efficiencies in other places to make up for the fact that we need more janitorial time in the BSRC? I just really want to make sure that we have a bigger building and we have more care. That's what I'm up to here. So just if someone could assure me of that, please. Thank you. So where would that cost be in here? Which expense category, I suppose?
Would be number 41, license and permits fees.
License and permits and fees. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions on the Beaumont Sports and Rec Center? We're happy funding at the level it's funding at. All in favor? Carries. Human Resources Information System. Questions? I've got one, but it actually concerns the Human Resources Information System, the City Works Consulting Service, and the Information Technology Services as a whole. Because these are 3 IT projects that are all based on platforms, and one of the emerging trends in smart cities is to tie everything together. And so I'm just wondering if these all tie together, or we're going to be operating in silos, or what's the sort of, like, I don't want to be 5 years from now going, our technology's all siloed and we got to do something different. And so I'm just wondering what the future technology plan going forward is. CEO?
Yes, that consideration has been given to all of these systems so that they are working and talking to each other. They need to. There's not a lot of interface between the HRIS and CityWorks. I would suggest, I'm looking over at Donna, the idea, as we spoke a bit about last night, of the IT technology services to do just that, is to pull our systems, which have been bolted on for years, and get them working together and take advantage of the latest technology and the latest approaches so that we're finding efficiencies in our systems.
Yeah, because I'm a big proponent in technology and using technology effectively, and I just don't want to see what seems to be 3 individual projects operating in isolation and then causing a bigger mess when we try to upgrade 3 years from now.
It's not the case.
So, cool. Further questions on any of those 3 items? Well, Human Resources, CityWorks, and Information Technology. Councillor Stout.
Just a quick question on page 14 under the justification. There seems to be an edit to that sentence that left it incomplete. Changes required to keep up with the onboarding of various. I'm assuming there's something else in there.
Yes, that would be correct. We can get that edit out.
Thank you.
What
should it say, by the way?
I'll look that up and get the answer to that question for you.
Where are you looking, Councillor?
Just CityWorks Consulting Services, I'm very...
Onboarding of various, okay. Councillor Newkirk?
Yeah, thank you. Just more of a comment on 14 on CityWorks, that I'm glad to see something like this in front of us to wrap up and bring things kind of to the new age a bit, and have some systems that talk together, because without that, with it, as I alluded to last night, we should see some efficiencies as well around not having to have spreadsheets and books and binders and whatever else. So I'm just happy to see something like that. The question I would have is, do we know of other municipalities who have had some success using this software? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Van Newkirk. CityWorks is a software that is being used all across North America. In Alberta alone, the City of Leduc uses it. The City of Chestermere, that's actually who we partnered with to get the CityWorks piece working or running, is through Chestermere. We did a joint grant application. I just forgot the name of that town. Oh my gosh, the Sylvan Lake. Yeah.
Sylvan Lake.
So is this one of those booths I can go to at AUMA and FCM and talk to CityWorks about?
If they're there, yeah.
Why we should use their software? Or?
I think they were there at FCM last year. I don't remember for sure. But yeah, if they're there, that would be a vendor.
Okay.
All right, starting with the Human Resources Information System. Comfortable with the ask? All in favor? Carries. CityWorks Consulting. Comfortable with the ask? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Information and Technology Services Program. Questions? All comfortable with it? All in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Economic Development Strategic Initiatives. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Worship. I have a question. It's meant to be 90,000 added to the base budget every year. Is that the intention? So it's vague in terms of what you're going to do with the money. I get that initiatives we don't know, but could you give me a little more comfort that we need that amount of money and why?
have a number of strategic technology programs that we're assessing right now, which is one that we don't know exactly the scope of reference and maybe or stuff like that. That's what we're going to do. After that, as the detail becomes available, we'll definitely share it with council. At this time, some discussions are preliminary, but they are taking place.
So 270,000 at the end of 3 years, and then the idea would be ongoing, or?
With that, we would just really got more information and more involvement and how the models that the council has been monitoring that topics and make sure that we start acting these projects on the
And one last question. This is in addition to, I think, something like 80-85 that's already in the budget for initiatives?
That is for something we have something that's the ICS servers. So the program we have it's actually cost recovery targets. That is existing programs. Strategic initiatives is for
I guess the last question is any of this money meant for travel and training, or is this all for whatever hard cost related to here in Beaumont? This is separate. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Goswami?
Yeah, thank you on this. Would the night market be considered a strategic initiative?
It is not being discussed as of yet. But that is something that's going forward.
Yeah, I guess if I recall, every year they come to us and then we try and figure out where we can fund this from. We know the ask is going to be there. They went through the grant program last time and it kind of maybe not the right use for that. I don't know, but so what you're saying is no, it's not considered within this. Maybe I'll ask another question. Should we consider it as part of this? Maybe I'll ask council as opposed to, I mean, you obviously, if you thought you would have put it in here. I guess my concern with this is, is it a grant or is it economic development, right? They're going to come every year. Is this something we want to talk about? As opposed to making them fill out these forms and then we have to give them 50% because that's what our policy says and all this sort of stuff. Okay, I don't want to have a discussion, so sorry.
Okay, so,
That's the last time we decided?
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up on it.
No worries.
Yeah, I don't think, and maybe this is just something for us to ponder and we can think about it at committee of the whole for us to maybe have some more direction for us. But it's obviously an economic development piece. And it does a good job in the city, and so just curious if we want to make them go through the ground process, all that sort of stuff.
CEO, a couple comments?
Yeah, a suggestion I would make is that you've identified a couple marquee events, Blues and Roots, and there's a couple others that you've set aside that money for outside of the grant program. Perhaps this is one to consider doing the same thing.
It's I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up. It was just on my list, so here we go.
It's the right place to bring it up.
Yeah, and so maybe we don't make the decision now, but maybe we see if the night market is prepared to come in and chat and see what.
Well, for me, whether or not this is an economic development initiative would depend upon the number of vendors that are actually from Beaumont. Because if it's preponderantly, or the preponderance of vendors is from Beaumont, I could see support doing that as a business support activity. But if it's 50% or 70% or the majority of them are coming from outside to sell to our residents, then it becomes more of a trade show, and I'm comfortable with them going through the granting program because I still think the night market is a good thing for the vendors that are in the city of Beaumont that actually do attend it. So it's great for our people.
What about my suggestion then? We just ask them to come in at some point over the next little while just to give us an update to make folks more comfortable on whether we should have it as a permanent line item or not.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Dowlett?
Actually, my question was going to be exactly that. If you're thinking of making it an actual line item, which I think considering the profile of the event itself, I think it has some merit to consider making it a line item, all things being considered equal. I think it could be a line item. My thoughts might be, as you all are aware, we gave them $10,000 a year and a half ago for the first time to do the event. They came to the grant committee this past year for this past year's event. There's an error in their application. They only got 5 grants out of the 10 they wanted. They still made the event work somehow, which I thought was quite impressive, actually. So the question may be, I would consider making it a line item, but if we did, that would, I believe, add on to the 1.72 mill rate, right? So,
or it would come out of the $70,000 we have in community grants and be reduced.
Can we just reduce the grant? That's my question was going to be.
Or we take down 90 to 80.
Right. That's what I was going to ask the question. So you, at a face value, line item means increase in taxes, or we take the grant program, knock it down by 10 if that's our decision, make that night event a line item for 10, grant programs down by 10, it's even, right? That's what you're sort of, I like the idea of doing the adjustment.
To be clear, I don't want to spend half an hour debating $10,000 again. I agree. I agree. I just want to know where it should be. And
well, this is the right spot to have this discussion. So the question is why don't we? I'm going to move that we take your suggestion. We get the night market in here to a committee of the whole, and we can have a discussion with them surrounding whether it's an economic development initiative or a trade show, and then we can figure out what we're going to do with grant money later. Mr. Sear? Yeah, we're coming to that discussion.
But yeah, I'm good with asking them to come in. We can talk about.
That says that's what we should do because we can't go this in one.
Okay. Good. Well, we have to keep in mind that there's money going from various pots. But yeah, I agree. So.
One of the things that perhaps we could do is something like this.
Yep. All in favor of getting the night market into community of the whole to do a broader, deeper dive into whether it's an economic development initiative or granting? All in favor?
Aye.
Somebody want to go grab Councillor Barnhart? You guys gonna say? I am gonna laugh. I've got 10 more minutes. So as soon as we get through funding, I'm intending to take a break. So talking road condition assessments. Is there somebody from administration that would like to speak to this project specifically and the need for it? Oh, sorry. I thought in my mind we passed that. My fault. All in favor of the economic development strategic initiatives at 90,000? Comfortable with the ask?
So that this could be one option where if we needed to put that 10,000 in a line item, it could come from here. But I'm good to move it forward to them.
Yeah, same thought. 90. All in favor? Hands up. Thank you. Road condition assessments.
Your worship, through the rest of council. So for 2020, the last time we did a road condition assessment was back in 2007. So we're recommending doing an additional an assessment in 2020. And then every year after that for the ongoing piece would be for road maintenance and using that for existing roadways for any of our maintenance.
Fair enough. So basically this sets the program for the next 10 years?
Yes.
Councillor Dallin, questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. If I may, on this particular ask, we don't have the appropriate engineering staff on staff to do this kind of an assessment themselves, or they don't have the qualifications for it, or is it more appropriate to source it out as I'm expecting it's a source out situation as opposed to using our own staff to do this?
Yeah, this assessment that we would be doing this year, it would be based on equipment. So it's actually a vehicle on the road that's measuring the asphalt thickness, any cracks and things like that. So we would take that information, get our pavement quality index and things so that we can forecast our capital plans for rehab.
Okay.
In the years in between, we would just be doing visual inspections with our current staff.
Okay, so the assessment requires equipment we don't already have at the end of the day.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick editing question. Again, in the justifications, twice it says, I am proposing or I recommend. Who's the I? Whose voice is this in? Is it the mayor's, the CAO's, or somebody else?
It's not the mayor's.
Well, this really eventually go out to public, right? So somebody is going to be reading this document. So if I don't know who's saying it, then I'm sure a lot of the public will be confused as well.
Thanks. CEO?
I'm not sure what the question is.
There's some. Can we just edit it?
Is the intent to have this in the first person, or does it need to be?
Oh, we can edit that to grammar for sure.
Yeah.
What we do is we ask the appropriate technical expert to explain why there's a variance in the budget, and that's who fills out the form. So it could have been the engineer, it could have been Kathy, it could have been me. So
okay.
Yeah, we could standardize the wording.
Okay, so question, there's an alternative to move forward the project's outlined but only complete half the roads. Is that efficient? Not efficient? Like what is the project going to double in cost or be more because we did half the city at a time, or like what is the actual forced impact of only doing half?
The alternative to do only half of them was just to try to reduce funding requests.
But didn't answer the question. The question is we do 35,000 this year, and we're asking for a total right now of 58. And so does that mean if we do it in 2 years, it goes from 58 to 70?
No, we would just do the other 35 in, say, 2021.
That's what I mean. So right now, if we do it all in 1 year, it's 58,000. Yep. It's cheaper. If I do it in 2 years, it's now 70,000, which is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. So that's what I'm asking.
Correct, but we'd have to remobilize the equipment, which is the additional cost.
Councillor Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this one. We've been doing this. So assuming we've been, you said we base off our neighbourhood renewal program off this, so 13 years. That's obviously a long time, but we seem to have been, okay with that. I'm just curious, we're obviously in a pretty tough spot financially. I'm just curious why it was brought this time forward. Like, is this something, that we can wait a couple of years when we're in a better position potentially? Obviously, keeping maintenance of our roads and all that sort of stuff is important. This is 58,000 to check out roads. I think they're pretty good. Can we hold this off?
If council wishes to hold off, then absolutely. The reason why it did come forward for 2020, we're just launching all of our city works programming. We're starting our asset management planning, so this would give us a baseline of our current road infrastructure moving forward so that we can do all of our capital planning.
Okay, you got me a baseline. That's good enough for me.
Councillor Barnard?
I guess I'm still back where you were, Mayor, with the 35. I understand the efficiency of doing it all at once, but if you do 35, you don't do the same roads again. You do half of the city, I'm guessing.
That would be correct.
And then the other 35 is, again, it would be 35 and 35. There's no...
Approximately, yes.
But we do still but have $23,000 that could go towards something else. Thank you.
So seeing no other further requests to speak, so I'm sitting that I think we should approve it at the 58,000 and take the efficiencies of doing it all in 1 year. So I'm going to propose that. So comments on the proposal? So you like to do it 2 years? Okay, well, we'll see if my motion gets defeated, and then we'll talk about the 35. So all in favor of the 58? All the roads in 1 year, because I'm into saving the 15 grand for the second year. So that's where you get your 15 grand from, was in 2021. Probably. Okay, I was trying to make her, but I got to get up. So we're going to take 5.
This here, is that just 50,000 going into? That's not a software.
No, this is supposed to be which I think is looking for.
Oh, right. So we're just going to build it in
As an ongoing.
That's what I thought. I was just going to confirm it wasn't something that wasn't going to work. Because there's no sheet in there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. I was like,
so I can.
You can kind of just say anything that you can place as an ongoing operating certain life cycle.
More maintenance versus,
yes,
there was a pretty big deal.
That's wrong. Just want to make sure that's on page.
Yeah, that's all.
Actually, Councillor Barnhart had got a really good point on our last item for road condition assessment. So let's just I want to go back to it. So Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. And perhaps I've not got this correct, but I think in talking to Mr. Dowler, there's some clarification needed on the road condition scores. So the 58,000 on page 17 looks like it's one time only. However, it does say on the top of the page 17 ongoing. So when I questioned that, I was told that on page 11 it shows that the 58,000 is part of the ongoing budget. So if it is part of the ongoing budget, then to the mayor's point about it's more efficient, and I understand where he was coming from, to do it in one fell swoop. That's not correct. This 58,000 is going to be there every year for further road conditions, or is it for something else that we are not sure of? That's my question.
Sure. So I take full responsibility for this one. This was probably a last minute change that didn't flow through everywhere in the document. The idea was trying to transition from a one-off ask of $58,000 to do the road condition assessment in 1 year and start to build more of a road maintenance program into the budget on an ongoing basis, knowing full well that, again, coming back to maintaining our existing assets, there are, on an annual basis, operational costs associated with maintaining those assets. In 2020, the plan is for a road condition assessment. In 2021, it would likely be something else. So what you're seeing on the summary page is a reflection of an ongoing budget. The numbers within the one pager that was provided are only showing in 1 year. As Councillor Barnhart mentioned, at the top of that page, it mentions it is ongoing. So I apologize for the confusion. I think the question goes back to council as to what is council comfortable with. Are you comfortable with the road condition assessment on a one-time basis and then that's the end of it? Or are you comfortable creating a road maintenance program, 2020 being the first one, starting at $58,000 on an ongoing basis? The last thing I'll mention is the $58,000 in 2020 is being funded by the 1.7% tax increase. So if you did determine that you're only comfortable funding it for 1 year in 2020 for the road condition assessment, we can possibly look at funding it from a reserve.
What?
If I know I'm the one that voted against this particular one, but I'm looking for some savings here out of the tax levy so that we can fund some of the unfunded items. And one that stands out for me is the 125th year celebration. So again, I don't know how this is going to turn out with other things that are going on. This to me is one possible source for that, and spending $35,000 this year and perhaps bumping it up next year might be another option. So I realize I'm the only one that voted against it, so I'll listen to what others have to say.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Worship. I'd be in favour of funding this as a one-time only out of reserves then, and to the full 58,000, and then revisiting the ask next year's budget if there is another ask.
Fair enough. Councillor Van Kirk.
I twigged on something you said. As this would be the start of a road maintenance program. Can you explain road maintenance, the idea of a road maintenance program versus our neighborhood renewals versus the road fixing that we currently do? Because we still fix roads today. Thank you.
Right. And this is where Mr. DeBlanco could probably help me out. The separation here is really between operating costs versus capital costs. So renewal, you're going in, and as I understand things, fully replacing sidewalks, as an example. This would be more using these funds to fix possibly uneven sidewalks. So you're smoothing out the sidewalk rather than doing the full replacement. So you have money in the operating budget to do that smoothing. Capital budget does the full replacement. It would be the same things with the roads. program. So the road program may do crack sealing versus doing a full rebasing of the road that would happen on the capital budget.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would be at, I think my vote would stand for the 58,000 for this year, but I would want to revisit it next year and the year after kind of thing. So that's, I think, where I would stand right now. Look forward to other councillors' comments. Thank you.
Councillor McGowan.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe a comment and a question. I'm not a big fan of using the reserves to fund these sort of things. Again, I think we're just kind of trying to play some accounting tricks just to keep that 1.7 number there. I think we should look at what it actually costs to run the city. My question would be, we seem to be doing a pretty good job keeping up with our roads maintenance and all that sort of stuff. I get the last time we did this thing was 13 years ago. I asked before, do we need this? Obviously, you say yes because you put it in here, right? But I guess I struggle with, we seem to be doing a pretty good job at this on an annual basis. And to where Councillor Barnhart is going, I get the baseline. And so you had me at baseline with the city works come in, and I think that's what gets me over the road is making sure that we're investing in this technology, and let's make sure we get a baseline here so that we can use that technology appropriately and not have to throw in old data. So I support this, but I don't support it coming in from a reserve fund. I think this needs to be in the text.
Councillor Hendricks.
I'll go back to the justification, and yes, I agree that we should get a baseline, especially with roads. The thing about a road is that you don't see what's going wrong. It's all underneath, and this gets you that intel and tells you where you're about to lose some significant infrastructure. So I'm all for maintaining and grouping and improving what we've got for roadways. With respect to the reserves, is this a reserve that's earmarked for this particular item, or are we creating a definition to make this work? Has this been earmarked, paid for, a way of a need for this particular type of infrastructure payment, or is this just a way to get it paid?
From my perspective, it's a way to get it paid. And, we'll make a pitch here again for having it done. The information that the road condition assessment will provide us is, it'll certainly help with determining what those reserves should be going forward when we're looking at replacing roads, when we need to replace those roads. So from a financial perspective, yesterday when I talked about doing a full reserve analysis, this is some of the information that would give us some better numbers for that analysis, definitely.
Right, so there will be a reserve study. I know under Mr. Harris there was, I've kept my notes in previous meetings, so look forward to getting that report. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm hearing from members of council is we're supportive of the one time. Where we're sort of waffling is if this should be an ongoing thing. And so that's sort of the direction. So I think we're all agreed that this needs to be done. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But should we fund it from taxes or fund it for just this year only? Councilor Swain?
I don't know if it's whether we fund it. I mean, next year we're going to have a discussion about this, whether we fund it next year. I think the discussion is does it come out of the tax roll or does it come out of reserves? And I think you had indicated you put it in out of the tax for a reason. So I just think we keep it there, and then next year we'll debate whether it keeps going.
I think that's a fair compromise. Keep it funded the way it's funded, and then come back with a robust program to justify the ongoing 58. And we can always remove it next year if we have to. Fair enough? All in favor? Councillor Barnard. Sure.
Just to clarify, so the impact of the alternative that was here, the 35,000, that's no one's interested in that because it's only half as many roads. Is that what I'm hearing?
Because you got to pay.
You got to pay twice.
You got to pay
So to do the whole city instead of 50, it's going to cost eventually 70. So it's an extra $12,000.
It's going to cost us 58 every year.
Well, not on this particular item. The 58 is going to get
so
repurposed to something
that's what
different.
I'm having trouble with. We're funding something that we're not funding. I mean, we're talking about it as if it's this thing, but it's actually...
So 58,000 to look at every road in the city, and then next year they're going to use 58,000 to look at maybe other maintenance things.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, that's not, it's not all about road conditioning.
And then we're asking them to come back with that report at next year's budget to justify the continued ongoing funding of the 58.
I'm just seeing the alternative here. I was very appreciative of that, but I'm going to be opposed to this one.
Councillor Danlott.
So just to clarify, Your Worship, so right now it's in the budget as a tax increase, right? It's part of the 1.72. So are we suggesting leaving it there for now? We can always visit on Saturday morning and say, after all the adjustments we made, we're now at 1.4 or 1.9, whatever, and we can then go back to this and say, well, this 58 can still come up if we want it to, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying for right now, we can
For
just
now,
leave it here for now, but we can revisit if we want to. Depends on the next
Depends on how the next
day and a half goes through, right?
Well, I hope we're not here a whole day and a half.
Well, yeah, just relatively speaking.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, my thought on this was that we would create it, as they say, the baseline. That information would then create the work package that would come, and then hopefully some sort of schedule, cash flow, projection, and at that point we'd look at it again and say, hey, where are we at? I don't think we're asking to have this just be there for the sake of being there. In fact, I think the number would change significantly once we know if we got any issues, right? So one time, let's get it done, let's get the baseline, and then let's figure out what we've got under our feet to ensure that we get it done right. So, because it exponentially, there's no question about what it costs you. Once you lose your base in a road, then it doesn't matter how nice and smooth it is on top. It's the base that costs you the money. So.
Can we just take it out of 2021, 2022, the line items, or we only see the 58,000 here, and then we'll talk about it next year?
Yeah, definitely. I guess what I'm hearing from the conversation is council's fine doing it for 2020. With that information, we'll come back. Hopefully it can inform the reserves. We'll also come back in budget 2021. And if there's an argument to be made from administration for an ongoing program within the operating budget, we'll present it at that time.
Yeah.
All in favor? Carries. CEO?
I didn't catch the first part of that, Mr. Dollar. Sorry. So the funding source you're suggesting?
Funding source would be tax levy.
Thank you.
But still one time. I know the last item on the funded list that I think has some questions surrounding it is the inclusivity program. Councillor Moncaswain had a question on whether or not that's included in Indigenous Day.
Yep.
What's in that program? What's the intent there? CEO?
Just a sec. Kendra? Okay, just I'm going to refer to Ms. Raymond.
Okay. Ms. Raymond?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Council. The inclusivity program is a placeholder is in there as implementation items out of the strategic plan, the municipal development plan, and the social master plan. It builds upon the Métis Awareness Week that we had, where we celebrated the Métis this week, and not this week, earlier, and flew the Métis flag, and had a blanket exercise as well with senior administration. But it builds upon responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's called Action. And the municipality will be building an action plan and a work plan that will be associated with this. But this would allow for some startup costs so that we can actually deliver on some of those programming without needing to come back to council for budget approval. But it does strongly align with your strategic plan.
Yeah, so that's how I interpret it, is more of a programming thing. You got print materials, all that sort of stuff. What I don't see here is enough funding to bring in some Métis jiggers, some traditional Indigenous dances for a specific Indigenous Day celebration. If you can tell me, you can. I don't think you can do that for what you've got here. So I'm just curious what you plan on doing for that on the 21st of June.
Right now, I don't believe that there are plans that I'm aware of for the 21st of June, but that would be something that would then be built into this work plan if that was the desire to proceed with that. This would allow for some of those honorariums to be paid and different things like that to bring different Indigenous leaders and be able to have that and be able to.
Yeah, which is exactly why I don't think Indigenous Day is in this budget. So I would like for us to have a discussion about, providing some funds.
Propose a number.
Propose a number?
Yeah.
20K is enough, and Mike, you guys can find it in your own budget somewhere, as opposed to adding it to the tax roll. But I think if 20K should be plenty for us to figure this out. And obviously there's promotion, but then you've got to pay honoraries and all that sort of stuff. So 20, I think, would be sufficient, and I wouldn't want to add it to the tax roll. I think you guys can scrape up 20K somewhere.
So the motion is to change add $20,000 to the inclusivity program for Indigenous Days to be part of that programming. 20 grand to be found outside of a tax increase. Discussion for members of council. Councilor Daniluk.
Sorry.
Councilor Hendricks.
Your Worship, I was just going to ask for some clarity. Page 18, I don't know if we just jumped across. If we have, assuming we'll come back.
We'll come back to it, yeah. If you wish to come back to it, we'll come back to it. Discussion on the motion? Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. And I was very pleased and happy to see this one. I was surprised it was coming under planning and development, but your explanation makes sense to me because it's tied in there with strategic planning. And it sounds like this first year is more planning dollars and coming up with the action plan than it is the actual event. I agree with Councillor Monkoff-Swain that an event to be proud of would probably cost us more than that. I'm also reading this is ongoing, so maybe you weren't planning to have an event in this year, or is this inclusive of some events? Maybe that's my question.
Amen.
Through your worship, Councillor Barnhart, this would be a service level enhancement. It would be an ongoing project that would be expected to ramp up as we would have a firm understanding about what those costs to deliver that program were in alignment with Council's desires.
Councilor Monkoff-Swain has proposed an additional $20,000 to add the event. And in 2021, I'm assuming we would have to rebudget the 12 and relook at the 12 and 14 to make sure those were adequate. Ongoing.
Yes, the idea was to start with a small event of some kind, but if we're going to do the Indigenous Day on June 21st, that would be a different type of event than what was originally anticipated. We have $10,000 under here to deliver something, and then $10,000 also to do any material that might be related for public engagement or communications, that sort of thing. But
so that's kind of my concern would be the timing to do an event in June. You know, how big would it be? You can do it. The more money the quicker you can do it.
No, I'm not going to be up here and tell you how to run an event, but I can tell you that if you had 20K, you can run an event and you can pull it off. And it'll be a smaller event, but I think it's all part of what we're trying to do in the community. And I think this is something that would grow. We've got a lot of Indigenous folks here in Beaumont, but also we have obviously some Indigenous communities close by, down in Muscatine and all that sort of stuff that we could source from for some dances and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah. In saying that, every community has an Indigenous Day thing, so not something we can wait till the 20th of June and reach out on. But I just think it's really good. We had an awesome presentation here with the Métis flag. I really like where the city's going with the way you're starting off our meetings appropriately and acknowledging traditional territory. This is just another way to provide a bit of awareness around Indigenous history in our community. So, 20K. Further discussion? All in favor? That's the motion at hand, yeah. Carried. Thank you. Councillor Hendricks wants to pop back up a line item to fire equipment replacement. Councillor Hendricks.
No, I just just for clarity, I didn't see us vote on this, or maybe.
Well, I was about to get there.
Thank you.
Because I was hitting the ones where people got questions. I was going to wrap, in the interest of time, wrap the facility maintenance and fire equipment into a quick motion of, if everybody's good with it, all in favor, go. But I'm prepared to make that motion unless people want to talk about specific items. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. I was feverishly digging there while we were voting, and I support the last motion. I'm just taking a step back here for a second. You know, when I read our vision, together we make life better in Beaumont. We are the community of choice for livability and economic innovation. We have a vibrant arts community, ample recreational opportunities, and a healthy environment. We are culturally diverse and celebrate our Indigenous agriculture and French heritage. So a couple of times I've brought forward that I think we need to do a better job with that last sentence. So, as we were building the document and in a couple of reviews. So just wanted to state why I supported my vote there, but I was feverishly digging. So thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. I think we, on facility maintenance program for 50,000, I'm not seeing a page that's talked about specifically. Did you mention that last night where it was? I can't remember what we said last night about this 50. Where is it in the?
It's not in there.
Not in there? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's, again, apologize. It is not in the document at this time. What I can tell council is the 50,000 for 2020 is dollars planned to be spent within the youth center. So about $30,000 within the youth center, and then the remainder within city operations building to address some safety and security concerns. Again, the pitch with this one is ongoing. We know, again, every year our facilities are in need of some operating dollars to do some of these renovations, upkeep kind of activities. This provides some more sustainable funding in the budget to do those sorts of things.
Follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Great explanation. It does ring a bell from last night's discussions and all. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be too much difficulty to maybe add a page to this document so it goes out to the public. There's a page that corresponds to that.
Yeah, definitely we will have.
Thank you very much. I'm prepared to vote for it. I just wanted to make sure we had an understanding what it was. Thank you.
Sure. Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, and just while we're on this specific one, the CCBCC is getting a little nicked up. Are these dollars also part of repairs to that facility?
I'm not sure there's anything planned for 2020. I'd maybe look to our Director of Community Services to help me out if there is something planned specifically for that facility itself. That being said, if there is something there that we can address through the 50, I'm sure we will look at doing that.
Okay. It's just the what I would consider ongoing normal maintenance repairs. Walls get nicked up, exterior got a little nicked up, you know, these things. So, because once it starts to go, it tends to keep going.
Exactly.
At the larger rate, it seems. So, yeah, okay.
And that's why I'm content with the 50 grand being ongoing, because as the facilities age, it's only going to get worse. So,
right.
Councillor Van Newkirk. Sorry? And we're bringing a big new one, which is going to take some dollars too. So,
I was just went back to review some of my notes from last night, and the number I had down was for the CBYC was 30,000 in renovations. So 30 of the 50 would be the renos for the youth center.
Yeah, that's the projection right now. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. So facility maintenance program, fire equipment replacement program. Everybody's good? All in favor? Carries. Just before we move on, though, fire equipment replacement program.
Yeah.
Should that be an ongoing? Because it's currently a one-time.
Yeah, so this one I struggle with a little bit right now, quite honestly. There is a fire equipment reserve. This is one where I'd have to talk to Mr. Cook to get a better idea as to what, in a typical annual process, they'd be looking at for new equipment. And again, there's a bit of a capital versus operating conversation here as well. Any kind of capital equipment replacement should be dealt with through a reserve. Any ongoing operational equipment gear that's required within the fire operations should have an operating budget.
So do you want some time to bring it back next year?
Yeah, I think even if you give us some time, and right now it is essentially hitting the or included in the 1.7.
Okay.
If you give us some time, come the committee of the whole meeting, we may have a different solution for what this could be going forward.
Okay, because I, in the vein of everything else we've done about ongoing equipment placement, this sort of seems to fit into the same mode. So if we're going to start setting these funds up, now's sort of the time. Councillor Hendricks.
Worship, so we did undertake and completed a significant study regarding that very issue. I thought there was operating capital dollars attached to that, and that it would find its way into our budget documents over time. So I'd probably send you there first, sure. Because we did have people from down east, as I recall, who assisted us with that, and I thought did a bang-up job, and including not only let's call it operating capital with respect to equipment, but also potentially another site, another building, some other things, and they had projections in terms of how we play out in terms of population growth versus that ask. So I think that all has to be blended in. That's always been my concern about studies, right? You get them done, and they get put away, right?
Right.
You really want them operational. You want it part of the overall budget process. So thank you for sure.
Councillor Swain.
Yeah, to me, I guess this surprised me. I think was it last year we had the SCBA conversation. I think that might have even been in capital. So I was too surprised. I thought that we had a bucket of money, we identify our equipment, and like this is something that we know every 10 years you need to replace. So I'm surprised that it was a new or enhanced funded item. So I'll leave it to Bill to tell the SCBA story about how well that went.
That was a fun day.
Yeah, I think I'd like, for me, I mean, obviously everyone supports, getting this updated equipment, but just the process of how it's in here as a kind of, as an operating item like this surprised me. So I'd be interested in that analysis. Yeah.
It's a fair comment. I think we can take it away and hopefully come back with some good news for you around the actual funding of the ask. Yeah.
And if we need to increase the dollars to build the proper equipment reserve, but like come analyze that too.
For sure.
Let's build it in. Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general question while Mr. Cook is in the room, of course, as well. So we're looking for 10 sets of equipment in this ask right now. Is that sufficient, or do we currently replace 10 sets this year and 10 more sets 2 years from now and 10 more sets 2 years after that, and do it on a staggered basis, or we need 8 more sets, we do 18 right now and call it a day? I'm not trying to spend more money, but I'm just wondering how often these sets, if we have a staggered replacement date for our equipment for our guys and ladies, of course.
Much like this. Since that time, working with our deputy fire chief, we've identified that standard replacement and standard annual replacement would help avoid these types of asks in the future. In addition to our current operating goals, this ask should be the last, with the exception of any changes to our operating model or structure up in time. So there would be 8 sets a year per year, which we could have this.
Fair enough. Okay, so moving down, unfunded. In the interest of time, we're only going to deal with the ones that council would like to have funded. So is there any of the unfunded items that we've talked about, the community garden pilot project, event services, art society, city of Beaumont 125 year celebration? We're going to talk about all these, aren't we? And the feasibility study for arts and culture building. Councillor Van Newkirk, where do you want to start?
Sure. I'm going to start with the good news story. Well, they could be all good news stories. We'll start with the good news stories. I think that the council Operating budget freed up 30,000 for the city celebration, so I think we should fund that city celebration. Thank you.
I agree. Can I throw a friendly amendment on that?
Sure.
Can we add it to an ongoing item? Because that block party was a big hit, and so this year it can be a city 125, but I think we should continue that celebration going into the future.
Yeah, friendly amendment accepted. Thank you.
Councilor Margolis-Main?
Can I add a friendlier one?
Sure.
Just to make the job a bit harder again. So yes, we did find 30K in council. I think that was prudent of us, but I think, this is something, yes, I agree, it should be an ongoing thing, but I think, again, sharpen pencils and all that sort of stuff, and if you can find that in your total budget for this ongoing event, I think that would be preferred than throwing it back onto the tax. So see what you can do, but my preference here with that, we can find that within the 1.7.
Councilor Hendricks.
Worship, and of course I sit on the community events committee, and we did have the interim budget discussion, and I absolutely raised this issue to make sure that there was no misunderstandings, that this money was not in the previous promotions committee budget, and that these dollars would be added to the interim budget. Just walk me through what happens when we have that discussion, we have the motion, we bring it forward. I'm told I can then tell our people on the events group that go ahead and plan and go ahead and book and go ahead and get this done, only to find in our documents that it's unfunded. Help me out with the process.
Yeah, I'll address that. The discussion on the interim budget, what we suggested is that we had put, I believe, 1/4 of the 2019 budget set aside that we could keep the lights on. You specifically asked the question about actually a couple of events, but that event being one of them, and that would there be funds available to plan and conduct that event? And we said yes, and we maintain that we could have done that. We did it last year, and it was not in a specifically budgeted item, so we were confident that we could do it. This formalizes it and puts it in a line item for years forward when councillors and administration changes. So it right sizes the budget. We're fully confident that we were able to find that money if we needed to.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
I agree. Thank you. Just a suggestion that we keep track of how much money we asked admin to find in that 1.7. We're now at 50,000. Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm going to want to see a summary. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to make sure I understood what was just told to us. First question was, how much is currently in the events committee budget? Councillor Hendricks or CAO? Like what is the baseline that we're talking about now in the promotions committee, events committee budget?
90-ish.
How much?
I'm going to leave it to admin. About 90-ish is what I recollect.
Yeah, I think Mr. DeBlanco is just trying to find that for us.
All right, well, while he's looking, Councillor Downlock?
Thank you.
Or unless you have another question?
Well, I just want to come back to that because I want to make sure I understand.
Well, while he's looking, we'll
Okay.
Councillor Downlock, and then we can follow up.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I like the idea of trying to fund the 30 grand from somewhere else. I'm fine with that idea. So my question would be, Mr. Dallor, so we found the 30,000 in the council budget, which we're not going to spend, so that 1.72 will be reduced by 30,000, correct?
That's correct. All things being equal.
All things being equal. We find the 30,000 somewhere else. The 30,000 we've reallocated from council budget will have a direct impact on the 1.72 at this point.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, did you find it?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay, we'll come back. Similar vein, event services. We're running events now. We're having to do all that stuff. Why is it extra? Why do we need to put it in as extra? The event services line item for $12,600. I will clarify the question. Basically, we have to have public washrooms, first aid, tent, stage installed. Like we're doing all of this for all of these events that we've had now. Is like this. So is this an increase? Like, how are we covering this 12.6, or did we do it in the past? Okay. Sure. Councillor Van Newkirk, different topic.
Yeah, but it might be for the same person. Let me try it. The community garden project. Just wondering, it says in here that the Beaumont Ag Society is willing to help out in setting this pilot project. I'm just wondering who would actually own this project to get it organized, done, and across the line. Would the intent be for the Ag Society to own this thing and get it done, or is it administration owns the project with support from the Ag Society? Thank you.
Sorry.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, this would be something that would actually be owned by Planning and Development and then run in conjunction with any other community groups such as the Ag Society or even the somewhat defunct Wild Beaumont or other groups that might want to participate.
Okay, thank you. So it isn't just get funding under Planning Development handed over to that group to do. Planning and Development would be intrinsically involved in the program as it unfolded.
Yes, administration would run the program. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My problem with that particular ask is that the Ag Society already runs a very successful community garden program, so why would we duplicate it? Councillor Barnard?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I didn't realize that. I was struck by the agricultural elements here, given that I sit on the regional agricultural master planning, and wondering if, well, I think there are mentions of us doing other things around urban agriculture in our master plan, and I'm wondering if this is part of that, and if you see that as being essential to moving ahead on the urban agricultural plans. Because I like the idea of this. I'm not sure of the ins and outs of it and why we're taking it from the traffic signal box wrapping project. I mean, I don't get that one, but you can see us moving money over. I don't know that I need to know where you're getting it from. But if we have that money and 4,500 might work towards urban agriculture, do we need the other 4,500? And it led to questions. I like the idea of the urban agriculture being a focus, but I wasn't exactly sure what was being, whether this is the way we should go. So if you could make the case for it, I would support it.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Barnhart. I'll try to make the case for it as best as I can. We had been approached by actually several different groups within the community wanting to start to have a pilot project for a community garden actually in our Centreville Park behind Chartier. And these numbers are actually based on some of that initial work that had taken place last year, but due to the construction season that was happening, we were not able to execute any of this or be able to even recommend the use of that space for community garden, knowing that we just put some storm infrastructure in there as well. So with the use of this project, it's going to meet a lot of our goals. If you'll recall, a couple of years ago, the U of A, through their planning studio project, actually completed an urban agriculture strategy, was here talking to council about that. And this would be something that actually comes out of that. So it's a way, community gardens are a way for urban municipalities to embrace agriculture, to have local food production, to get community members involved. And they've been enormously popular. As you mentioned, the Ag Society already currently runs one. The city of Leduc has them. But they're a way for children and all sorts of people to have local food. Even the restaurants. So this was actually going to be behind Chartier. There was going to be some local restaurants that were going to be able to utilize the food that was grown within Beaumont in this community gardens within their local restaurants. So it's kind of an dev initiative as well, community partnerships, but really fulfills a lot of different mandates on that. And I think that it's a really strong program for Beaumont. It's going to be unique for us. We haven't done something like this, and this would just be the first year out of that.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you mentioned earlier, the Badass does have a community garden program based on their grounds outside the main part of the city. This would be, I guess, inside the city boundaries, more traditional boundaries, of course, but it's only $4,500. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but at the same time, I'm wondering, one observation is on page 11, it shows as being a one-time cost. Bottom of page 20, it shows also 2021 expenditure for next year as well. So I'm just wondering if administration has the time to allocate resources to this kind of initiative. I don't see it being a huge thing, but if they have the time for it, great. It's not a large dollar figure. I'm just worried that it may become a bit of a larger animal for administration to have to manage it than you may look at face value. So I'm just wondering not to have administration bogged down in the future with this project if the volunteers don't pull up their end and all of a sudden the city has to take it over, and that's what I'm kind of getting at.
And it's also proposed to be in a location that is also proposed to actually be something else besides a garden. Eventually it would go. If I'm thinking if it's going to be by Adjournment, that's going to be a town square, according to the cart.
Oh, that's a good point, actually.
Your Worship, that area actually behind Mayonnaise and Chartier there, it is actually allocated for a park space. The town square could be in several different locations, but that is envisioned to be an urban park and an urban plaza. There'd be parking on one part of that parcel, and then there would be this larger green space, open space. So this could integrate nicely in there. It's close. If seniors from Place Beauséjour wanted to use it or different things like that. We have been in contact also with other departments within administration to make sure that this was something that was feasible. That is also why we've approached other groups as well to help us with that. So we would be setting those parameters. We're not physically going to go out there and hoe the garden plots and whatnot, but we would be setting that up for people to be able to use.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to this project here, in the spot that we're thinking, is there an active water source there? Just thinking about the logistical problems that they have had at the Ag Society, and one of them has been the continued access to water and the hoses and all that kind of stuff. That's the first question I have.
Through your worship, Councillor Van Newkirk, yes, actually, we do have the water truck that goes around that our parks facility does use, and they would actually help to contribute the water for that. We were aware of that as an issue. Yeah.
Okay, a second part to the question.
Sure.
Just, do we need a year to get organized here before we start growing corn? It feels like there's a bunch of things that we might need to do. I don't know. Maybe administration has done enough work in the background to get this going, and they're confident with that. But just a question. Thank you.
Through your worship, Councillor Van Newkirk, we would be able to start that in 2020.
Okay.
Councillor Stout.
I'd support the community garden for 4,500 for the amount of money as it is, and the main benefit I think is one of community good neighbourliness, fostering communications, enabling seniors who might want to go but possibly can't to be able to do so. I think it's good for the community. I'm not sure it'll have any profound effect on environment or nutrition, but those are secondary concerns in this case, I think.
Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Worshipman. I'll just add to the rationale why I think we should support this, is that we also have in our vision to support and promote our agricultural heritage, as well as from a regional perspective, we would be supporting the urban agriculture and the regional agricultural master plan. So to me, it's worth it for $4,500.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
I'd like to make a motion that we include the community garden pilot project and fund that in this budget, but direct administration to find the $4,500 and the 1.7%.
Further discussion on the motion? All in favor? 6-1. Okay. Yeah, I think it's duplication of service and in a poor location. But have we found any information from the last two questions for event services? And
Under the events, marketing promotion, there's $150,200 budget. Marketing promotion covered markets.
Okay.
There's also an additional under contract services which will touch some of those events. I'm not sure how much page budget back is there. Page 31. Where are those costs?
No worries. I think that only we need to know. I think we just need to follow up, Councillor Barnard.
I don't know that I got all of that. So there's, what, approximately $150,000, is that? And we're asking, so event services is asking for $12,000 to be added to?
That's right.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, the numbers are flying around here and I really don't have any basis on which, we're talking about different events being put on and $20,000 and now we've got 180 and these events are big events and they bring out the whole community, so I just don't know what to tie anything to here. I think we have been relying a lot on volunteers to do the events, and then there's the events that are not part of that committee that we somehow find the money for. So I honestly think we need to get our heads around this one, and if that's what's needed, it's needed, but it feels piecemeal to me. I don't really feel prepared to make a decision on that right now. Maybe we need that brought back to us.
Councilman?
Yeah, my recommendation, you're right, there's a bunch of events flying around. My recommendation is we just give administration some time, bring it back to committee of the whole, and we'll have including Indigenous Day, including, what I thought was 90,000, now 130,000 for, let's just get all the events, let's have a conversation, and put our agenda on committee of the whole, and we can work our way through that.
Yeah. And tie the event services extra ask, because we should have been doing all that all in the past with all these events we've been running anyway. So, all in favor of giving a bit more time to gather some information back to the whole? On the whole thing. Councilor Hendricks?
No, so I just want to understand what's happened here. So are we now reviewing the budgets for all these projects under the community events? No. Those are a go.
Yeah.
Right?
What we're trying to do is figure out all these extras, how it all fits together,
okay,
and tie it all in.
Yeah, so next Wednesday we have our community events committee meeting, and of course planning is in earnest, and part of that planning includes for saying yes to people like Wild Rose and others who bring in some fairly significant attractions to Beaumont. So I'm assuming that's all a go. What we're talking about is just this simple ask on dollars and potentially some additional work.
Yes.
Not the baseline that
not the baseline
already enjoys. Okay, thank you.
Good clarification. Administration clear on what we just asked for? All in favor? Carried. 2 items left. Both having to deal with the Art Society. The Art Society has an extra ask of $85,700. And then there's also a feasibility study for an arts facility for $150K. On top of the $85,700. It didn't make the book, but well, we've already given them 50.
Yeah, to me, it's I read this as an additional 135,900.
Yeah,
I don't know. So Mayor passed us out the request from the Art Society. Annual operation budget request is 185,900.
So $50,000 of that ask was for public art at the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center, and that is included as funded in the capital budget. So the additional 85,700 is the net of what we already have budgeted for them, $50,000 in operating, and the $50,000 capital ask, which would be a one-time.
So that, go ahead. Sorry. So that includes, the 185 includes, does that include the half-time position?
Yes.
I'm assuming you're looking at the letter from the...
Yeah. That's maybe unfair to ask you questions on a document you don't have, but basically, so what, everything, it's just a confusing document, but everything under one, annual operation budget request, 185,000. So to me, an annual operating budget is an ongoing thing, right? And so you've taken the capital item out of this, which makes sense. But things like the half-time position, which I personally don't support, in here. Then they've got other things like the Blues and Roots, youth and children program support. I guess they're trying to come at it a different way. They tried one time and for I think 25,000 previously, didn't get support. So I guess the question is, instead of us going line by line in each item here,
my intention was not to go line by line item.
yeah. So do we want to just have a discussion? Do we want to keep them as they are, or do we want to?
That's discussion. We've already got 50,000 approved in the budget. Do we want to? I don't want to sit and tell them how they're going to spend their money. We'll just give them a grant and let them go. Are we comfortable with the 50? Do we want to add? And I don't think we should look at their list and decide what's in and out. That's on them.
100%.
But are we comfortable with the level they're funded, or do you want to add to it? I guess is the question, and then we'll deal with the art problem in capital. Sorry. So there. Okay. Okay. Well, basically it's the 135. They want to do $135,000 worth of stuff. We've allocated them 50 right now of the 135. The question is do you want to give them the extra 85.7 over and above last year? Keep them status quo, give them part, reduce them, or not? And we'll deal with the $50,000 art when we get to capital. I got to be honest, in a tight budget year, I'm status quo. Because we're like the part of it, like even when I'm talking about staff members and things like that, they're talking about the Arts Council. Well, our administrations support that Arts Council, so there's staff support for that already. Tight budget year, I'd like to see the Arts Council get stood up before we start doing some of these initiatives that are outlined in this letter. And I'm status quo. I'm happy with that. I don't know where the rest of council's at.
Yeah, I mean, when I read the letter, the number one thing they talk about is the feasibility study. So I know we're going to have a conversation on that in a second. But yeah, I think it's unfair to ask administration and everyone else to hold the line and us provide a significant increase here for this. We'll support the arts and all that sort of stuff, but I can get behind stand up the council first and then come back and see where we're at.
Councillor Van
Sorry, Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, that's good.
Go ahead.
Councillor Hendricks?
Yeah, sure. No, this is not the first time the Performing Arts Center has been before council. It has gone through a report process once before, if you want to call it a feasibility study. We did look at all sorts of alternatives in terms of land, size, scale, population growth, and all the rest. I think it would be helpful, at least for this group, to get that report. I've also tried to assist them with providing them a copy of the Altus report that tells you what you can expect to pay for a facility like this in a particular region of the country, right across Canada. And it speaks to the style and type of response of the facility, so they've been given that. And also the Mary Winsper Center in Sydney, BC. I've given them a full set of drawings that I was able to obtain from them, plus a photographic review of the entire facility. And I think what they need to do is, before we get down this road, and I understand Mr. Tolley and I understand where he's coming from in terms of his background, and certainly we've heard some numbers from Mr. Tolley as to what he thinks performing arts facility would cost for this community. And we know what our overall budget in Beaumont would allow. So for him to be successful, I think we need to start with the basics. And I think we need to do a little bit more groundwork before we start putting money into a feasibility study. Because we've already done one. We see what happens to these documents. They sit, right? You've got to be able to get legs under it. It's got to be able to have money. It's got to be able to have process. I don't think we're there right now. And certainly this is a lean year for budget. So.
Okay. we'll come back to the feasibility study specifically in two shakes.
Sure.
But yeah, to the overall general ask, are we status quo or all in favor of status quo? Sorry, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
No, we can go ahead and vote this way.
All in favor of status quo for the 2020 year. Councillor Barnard.
Sorry, you wanted to get there, and I just want to clarify that I think what's being proposed for the operating is to get to where they want to get to, but taking it says 5 years, but I think it actually would take 3 years to make up that 200,000 that they're underfunded.
Well, they're not actually underfunded. It's the policy that just got put in place that, quite frankly, from my perspective, from their perspective, yeah, we're underfunded according to policy, but we're supposed to be moving towards it. My perspective is that the mechanism for council is get that arts council up and going. They're the ones that got to come up with the policies and procedures. What we're going to fund. That's the work of the arts council.
Good.
So,
I get that. I guess I just want to say that I think it's a matter of we're saying we'll go incrementally.
Yeah.
They want it all in one fell swoop.
I
don't think we're necessarily saying
no.
No.
Well, we're saying no to this year, but we're saying do some work with the arts council. That's what I'm saying.
You're saying not given any increases at all. You're not even.
I'm saying stay status quo with the grant we currently give.
So you're not accepting the admits, not the admits.
Well, it's currently unfunded, so.
Right.
Admin has not funded that part.
I'm just uncomfortable with status quo, and I'm not uncomfortable, but I'm also uncomfortable with giving them 85,000 more. Cut the difference somehow and give them some more, because I think this year they found themselves kind of cut to the bone. They were struggling to get everything done that they said they would get done, which agreed was ambitious. So I'm just wondering whether there's some compromise that could be met other than not just saying no to their ask for an increase. I don't know what that would be.
Councillor Stout?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, as far as, do we not have a policy that identified a nominal shortfalling in art spending that we had agreed to adjust? And if we don't give them any increase at all, are we not then? We're not following our own policy.
Well, no. We did not agree to give the Beaumont Society of the Arts any extra money. Our policy agrees for us
to increase
art spending in the community as a whole. Right? Because we got to remember, the Beaumont Society of the Arts is a separate independent group.
Yes.
And so the mechanism that I've always envisioned was the Arts Council would come up with plans, those programs, and extra spending, and move us down that path.
Okay.
Right?
So for those reasons, you're content.
And so for those reasons, I'm content to let the Arts Council get stood up and do some work and give us the plan and get us going to how we're going to meet the intent of the policy. Because the intent of the policy is not to give it all to the Beaumont Society of the Arts. The intent of the policy is to support arts as a whole in the community.
Agreed. Okay, so that answers that part of the question, and then I'm inclined to ask: is there, as proposed at the moment, there's no middle way here, right? We either give them nothing at all, or we give them the full 85,700. Is there any appetite for a compromise somewhere in the middle?
You would need to propose something and have council vote on it.
Okay.
7,000 more.
We've given them 50.
Yes.
I'm not going to pick and choose their
exactly
line
what
items.
I mean. I understand that.
I don't want to pick and choose their. We're not going to pick and choose their line items.
No,
we're going to give them.
I'm opposed to that, just as I was from the library board.
I'm not going to pick and choose their numbers. So
that would be a 50% increase in funding if you were to do that. Okay, would you like to move that?
Well, I'll take a friendly amendment and move it to 75. I'm not going to vote for it, but.
If I could, ask you this to not give them some additional funding after we pass the policy too, just seems really fair, given that we expect them to do more. So, that would be my rationale. If it's not supported, I understand that, but I do think that that's why we need to increase it, is to show them that we're serious about supporting the arts.
Councillor Van Niekerk.
Yeah, thank you. Three of us were part of the terms of reference. We worked hard on that. We came back to 3 different meetings. I got that through. It's been in front of council. We had a policy that we put together. We've voted on that. We've got that to that point, to the points that the mayor has brought up on the timing. I don't think there's any question from this council about the commitment to the arts at all. I value the mayor's statements around let's the council get stood up and organized and come back at us with some items after that happens. I support the, or maybe you can clarify the motion on the floor right now, Mayor.
Well, right now, the motion is to add $25,000 to the existing budget, because I allowed a friendly amendment. I'm still in the status quo camp until we get the Arts Council stood up and do the pre-work necessary to actually spend an increased budget. So.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Montgomery, followed by Councillor Van Liekerk.
Yeah, for me, the request in front of us, again, I'll just repeat your point, maybe word in a different way to see if we can get the votes. The request in front of us is from a group, a faction of the arts community. We are definitely going to get to this $200,000. No one's questioning that. We have set up an arts council to look at the broader picture of Beaumont. I would like that council to come to us and tell us how they think we can get to that $200,000 over the next 4 to 5 years. And so I'd rather hear it from them than us giving one-off things without knowing what the council thinks that's representing art in Beaumont, arts in Beaumont. So I'm not in favour of this motion here, and look forward to the council standing up and getting in front of us and telling us how we can get to the $200,000 difference. Thank you.
Councillor Van Liekerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, if you don't mind. Your initial motion was to maintain status quo, which was, after last night's discussion, $50,000 in the community services, right? That was last.
Give them
that was your motion.
Give them the same grant that we gave them.
The motion amended was to add additional 25, make it 75. So if we vote against it and it gets defeated, we're at 0.
No, we're at
just to clarify the motion, right? The motion was
if we defeat the 75, what we're voting on is an additional 25. Okay. We're not voting on the 50. Okay. I'm going to put another motion on the table if the 25 gets defeated, that we should remain status quo, and then we're going to go.
Okay, yeah. So the way I heard your motion, I'm thinking, well, that kind of said.
No,
just so we're clear. I know you're asking.
Yeah, I'm just asking on the motion is to ask if we're willing to add 25,000. We're not voting on the original 50. Sorry, I'll make that clear. So all in favor, Councillor Barnhart.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Montgomery, for clarifying that this is not the Arts Council that is asking for the money, it's the Society for the Arts. Forgive me for being confused, because this has gone back and forth, and they are the same people that I hear from. Yes.
Pretty close, yeah.
It is to extent, but I think in some respects, these people are working on building the council. I could be wrong on that. That's where this is confusing to me. So I wonder if this is one of those things, put it off a little bit, so we can get clarity on who's doing what. Because I am really feeling that this is entangled.
It is, and that's why we're going status quo, so they can still run some events.
Could we bring it back?
Let the Arts Council stand up, and then the Arts Council will bring a funding request back, and they can sort it out.
Well,
but it's not going to happen.
You're saying no to their request before I've really got my head around who's requesting what, where, when, how. And if I'm the only one, then forgive me. But I just think we're saying no at a very fragile point in their development. And having seen an Arts Council grow in Edmonton, I apologize. I thought this had more to do with that than it had to do with the one society. So I do happen to know the people, but I have to tell you the hats keep coming on and off. So I'm at a loss there.
The top of the document, and I too get confused, but the top of the document says Beaumont Society for the Arts, right? So that's their ask, a faction, and obviously a significant faction of the Arts Council, but a faction, not the full picture. So if the council has stood up and they said, hey, you know what, this is how we think we can get to that difference that you committed to in your policy, then I'm all in for sure. Ask the council get stood up, come back.
It would be a different conversation.
Different than saying no to this.
Yeah, 100%. We're not.
That can explain to us.
Is this what the council thinks is in the best interest of Beaumont, not what the society thinks?
Okay, so is your motion still on the floor then? Sure, if that's what you wish. Well, the motion will be to maintain funding to the Beaumont Society of the Arts at $50,000. Will that clear it?
No one else is like, we don't do that for the BRF, we didn't do that for the Heritage Society, we don't do that for, so this is what, when we talked about these long-term grants, we put this number in, and this number is going to grow. As soon as the council stood up, it's going to grow. We'll
understand all that. The question in my mind is, do we make them a small increase to cover growth in Beaumont and increases in prices? And what you're saying is no, because we didn't do that for other similar societies. Is that correct, by the way? That we did not do that for other similar societies?
Yeah, that's correct. In the 2020 budget, similar kinds of organizations have been held consistent with what the amounts they received in 2019.
Okay, then yeah, for reasons of consistency, then I'm now supporting status quo. But I wanted to have this debate. I want to get these ideas on the table so that we can find the truth, basically.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, Councilor Bryan has withdrawn her motion. New motion on the table to maintain Beaumont Society Arts funding for 2020 at $50,000. At $50,000. I want it for clarity.
Yeah, I think we should have it for clarity.
But it's already in the budget.
It's already funded in the budget, and we should definitely say whether we did.
It's all funded in the budget.
Yeah, record a vote.
Yeah, I'm going to record the vote. So, all in favor? Carries unanimously.
Unanimously?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can
I saw 7 hands go up. So.
Sorry. Of course we are, but
yeah,
that's what we're here for.
Councilor Dallett?
I guess the question right now would be, it would be critical to convey to them exactly what our expectations are, them coming back to us. As you mentioned, there has been taken on and off as who's sort of talking to who and who's talking to us, and I find it sometimes confusing, I have to admit, not being disrespectful, but I think if we, as you suggested, the council needs to come back to us, we need to let them know what we expect from them so they can come back to us organized and ready to ask for something we can then debate it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Fair enough. Final comments on this one before we move on to that feasibility study? Or are you moving on to the feasibility study? Yeah, go ahead.
So, my thoughts around the feasibility study, I'd like to have this discussion along with an in-camera item coming up. I don't know how to ask this, but yeah, I think there are other options for this. So, like I definitely think that we need to have a look at the feasibility of this. But in order to have the discussion that I want to have, it's about an item that's in camera. So I'm not quite sure how we process this.
Yeah, because there are no currently in-camera items for budget coming. So
can we table this one, and if we need to come back to it tomorrow, we can come back to it. And if you guys don't agree with the direction when we talk about an in-camera item, then we can definitely tackle it tomorrow. We need to give them an answer on the policy, on the request. I'd like to have the in-camera conversation first. The $150,000 specifically that they're asking for the feasibility study in this letter, not in the package. It's in the letter. It's the number one item that they talk about, and we definitely want to give them an answer on where we're at with that. But yeah,
pens.
Not for the specific thing, but there is an in-camera. Help me out here. Maybe you can help me out, Ms. Raymond. Can I add an in-camera item?
Okay, we will. Yeah, we'll get there in a second.
Okay. I guess so.
Can we just for now? We'll table this one. We'll table this one. We'll do some quick procedural things and in camera we'll find out exactly what you're talking about, and then we'll go from there.
Sorry.
No worries. But we'll get there. Okay. So we'll take 5 minutes and then proceed into capital.
Funded utility. Can we just quickly check that?
Oh, sorry, I was. Yeah. Funded utility. All in favor? Councilor, still at the bottom of page 11. Yeah. So there. Oh yeah, the closed circuit television inspections. Okay. And the thermal water and wastewater systems report.
24 and 25. Paid for already.
Paid for.
Paid for already. Councilor Van Nieuwkerk.
Just to, excuse me for a second. Both items on 24 and 25 are funded through the utilities revenue, so I understand that. Question on the $35,000 for the Beaumont water and wastewater systems report amendment. I assume this would be in support of future development in that area, and wondered about the requirement for the municipality to pay for this study versus the developers paying for this study. Just had a question if administration could comment on that, please. Thank you.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. So this $35,000 that it is to do additional modeling from our original utility master plan. So when we completed that, we looked at options to loop the water system and everything coming from our current commission lines, which are coming from the west. This would allow us to look at potentially temporarily servicing from Colonial Estates north into our newly annexed areas. This would allow us to see if there's still additional capacity in those mains, if we can do that. If not, we do have to service from the west as originally planned through this utility master plan.
Yeah, I guess follow up to that. Is that the responsibility of the municipality to figure that out? Versus the developer who wants to put the development there and wants to grow and wants to tie into those lines that are currently there, but may or may not be sufficient. Sorry.
Yeah, we as the city still have to make sure that we have capacity in our system. So the developer, yes, would be responsible for looking at utility servicing in their lands, but as a city, we have to make sure that we have capacity in our existing systems to accommodate, and then for future, how we're going to tie that into the commission lines to the west.
Okay. Yeah, that's good for now, I think.
Councilor Hendricks?
Yeah, just while we're on this, and certainly the wastewater piece and the last time Beaumont had a major event with respect to a flood. At that time, there was two engineering firms hired to create a study and certainly a master plan and a long-range ask for construction and upgrades. Just wondering, has everything in that list been exhausted? Has that all been done? Has it all been funded?
Councillor Hendricks, I have to actually go back into that report that was done back then. I do know that with the new utility master plan, we did have those documents incorporated into this plan. So the consultant that completed this in 2018 would have reviewed all of that information. So if the projects weren't completed then, they would have still been added to this one for future funding if required.
Did the upgrade to the stormwater management pond next to the aquafit, that was part of that discussion way back when. So I'm just not sure if everything's been done. It would be interesting to get a list as to how far down that line we got to in terms of all the needs to upgrade so we don't get hit. At that time, it was a 1 in 800 year storm event. Hopefully, I won't see that again in my lifetime, but it'd be interesting to see if we got everything cleaned up and what's left. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Danley.
Thank you, Worship. On the closed circuit television inspections line at $1 million, that's a lot of money, as I'm sure we all are aware. How accurate do we feel that number is in terms of the actual cost of doing it? Do we have any empirical data, or other municipalities have done a similar review? Stony Plain, similar size that we are population-wise, geographically probably very similar. Have they done one recently and they spend $900,000? Give us an idea. $1 million is the right number. I mean, 500 sounds much better, of course, but if that's the number, I want to get a comfort zone. You're comfortable that is a proper number for our budget purposes for today.
Councillor Danlick, so this $1 million was based off of, so the last time we did the CCTV for the whole city was back in 2006, and we based the estimate, or the cost that we used for the 2006 data. We also got a cost estimate from one of our CCTV companies that we use fairly regularly, and we looked at, so this basically will do the sanitary, so our wastewater system and our storm system in the oldest parts of the city so that we can get a baseline data set to put into our city works for our asset management planning. Because the last time we did it was nearly 14 years ago, so we need to reevaluate and get some baseline data so that we can start our capital planning. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to try this once more here. To my knowledge, no plans for development have been put in front of council for development to the north. I'm just wondering how come we shouldn't look to the developer to pay for this 35 grand. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, the responsibility for Beaumont services and our own lines does rest with us. Obviously, the developer would do their own due diligence, typically on how they would connect to those lines and whatnot, but we do need to determine what kind of capacity we have. This isn't unusual. It's just an add-on to that utility master plan that is due diligence.
Yeah, I think for me to feel comfortable with this spend, I would want to see some paper in front of us that's showing some commitment to development north of the municipality. Otherwise, I think we could probably defer this $35,000 to next year or the year after. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Response?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Van Newkirk, just as an update to that item, we have had an active developer that has been interested but has gotten caught through the annexation, the municipal development plan, and our intermunicipal planning framework process. Administration right now is actually currently working with that developer to bring their area structure plan to council. We're expecting a formal application as soon as the intermunicipal planning framework is adopted by council. So that would come in probably March of this year.
Councillor Margaret or follow-up from?
Yeah, just follow up.
Sure.
So the timeline on the budget, Mr. Dowler, before we would make any adjustments, what does that look like? What's the? I guess the question is would that ASP in front of us be in front of us so we could make an adjustment before that?
If the ASP comes to you in March, there would still possibly be some time to make some adjustments. The budget would be probably in front of you first part of April.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've had enough questions there. So.
Councillor Margaret.
Would it be fair to say that knowing this information helps us with the developer to try and entice him to come here to Beaumont?
Through your worship to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, yes, that does help, but that also helps them do their municipal servicing report, which is their and their hydraulic network analysis for them to be able to actually design their systems appropriately. If there is no capacity, and we have none, then they have to look at more expensive options and other alternatives. So we do need to know this in advance of being able to do this, and that will delay development.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Stout.
We just go back to the circuit TV inspections for a moment. Is there any scope in this is a huge spend that makes me uncomfortable. Is there any scope the way there was with the road surfacing, the road inspection, to spread it over more than 1 year and cut the cost per year?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Stout. And I guess the reasoning behind this was to get the oldest parts of the city completed to get this baseline data. But yes, we can definitely split it between multiple years.
Which is something would we like to consider? I mean, if we could do it in 2 years, we can cut it by $500,000. It's a significant save.
So right now, the money is essentially coming from utility rates. As we talked about yesterday, our utility rate increases for 2020 are really driven from the suppliers or external parties. Have to go back, and even splitting it over 2 years, have to talk with Ms. Lewin. Not sure it would have an impact on rates for 2020.
Okay, so it doesn't actually save us any money, or save the taxpayers any money, or ratepayers?
Technically, it wouldn't necessarily save money, possibly. It would just be a bigger transfer to the utility reserve, would be the result.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Thank you. So just to clarify, Mr. Dollar, so if this $1 million is done over 2 years, it would not affect the 1.72 tax increase, right? It's a totally separate issue.
Totally separate
just so we're
issue.
clear. That's my understanding, correct?
That's correct.
Am I correct? Sorry?
Yep.
Thank you.
Are.
All right, so seeing no further requests for speaking, we approve the funded utility enhancements as presented. On there? Carries unanimously. And we're on 5, and then we'll start on capital. camera really quickly. We'll get a quick update on a development matter that potentially has an impact on future budget discussions. When we come out of camera at 9 o'clock, we will, if there's any remaining items to be dealt with the operation, we'll do it. And otherwise, my intention is to come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, not 8, and start on capital. Questions, concerns on process? All right, can I get a motion to move into camera? Okay.
Based on that, can we have Mike just put out a post to say, so we're done before we should?
Well, so do I, but if anything comes out of the in-camera discussion, we're done. Shouldn't. I'm not anticipating it, but...
Sorry, just a social media post to let people know.
9 o'clock, not 8 o'clock. All right. All in favor of moving the camera, say aye. Okay.